and welcome to another episode of These Corners of the World Travel Podcast. I am your host, Kelly O'Brien. Today we are in Scotland. However, I'm not going to be talking exclusively about Scotland, rather my journey to get here from Spain with a cat, because I think, yep, she's still there. My cat Nairobi is sitting on the desk next to me, and it was a huge hassle trying to get her from one country to another, as I will explain. So I will start at the beginning and I will go chronologically through pretty much everything we did to get to here. It took a long time. It involved flying to Paris, renting a car in London, driving to Paris, then driving to Scotland. So I'll tell you exactly how we got there, and also some logistics about how to travel with a pet, what we did, how much stuff costs, that kind of a thing. So rewind, and we decided that we would move from Malaga, we being my boyfriend and I, we decided we would move from Malaga to Scotland. He's from Scotland, to be nearer to family. There's some family stuff going on, so we just thought for the time being, we should be here. It is unknown how long we will be here, probably a few months, could be longer, who knows, we're going with the flow with that one. And the problem is that I obviously have this cat, Nairobi. She's a Maine Coon. Usually with a normal cat, you could put the cat in the hold of an airplane, or in the cabin of an airplane, and, Bob's your uncle. You fly with the cat maybe doesn't like it too much, but it gets through it. You arrive in the destination you're supposed to go to. We did not get that lucky. A lot of things happened and we had to do some very unusual troubleshooting fixes, as I will get to. So we decided to move. Because we're not sure how long we'll be in Scotland for, we didn't really want to incur the expense of moving all our stuff to Scotland. We looked at a few different options. It was actually quite expensive to ship things. And then, of course, you have to deal with the whole Brexit customs issue. You have to pay some, fees and stuff to even get the boxes. So it's not even just the cost of the moving company. So after ruling that out, we decided we would get what is called in Spain a trasteros. Basically, that was a much more affordable option than moving all of the stuff or selling all. We did sell some stuff, but we didn't have a lot of time, and, the mental stress of not only moving with a cat, as you'll find out later, but also having to sell loads of stuff, we just didn't need it. So we got the storage unit. Every single weekend for about 3-4 weekends in a row, we rented a car because we didn't have any car or way of getting stuff from our two separate houses to this storage unit. We rented cars and brought stuff in, increments to the storage unit. We got into the storage unit, filled it up, did our little day trip, yasta. Then came the hassle of the cat. So she's a Maine Coon. I mean, that's not relevant, but, I guess it is, because she's a pure breed. They tend to sometimes have, stuff wrong with them. And in her case, I mean, it's not very common, but, it's more common than in mixed breeds, we'll say. She has a condition called megaesophagus, which is a malformation of the throat. So to look at her, you think she's totally fine, but internally she's, disabled, I guess. Basically, she has kind of a space in the front of her throat that shouldn't really be there. Well, shouldn't be there. And her throat itself is normal, goes down to her stomach, but there's this big gap, big space at the front. And when she eats, basically the food goes in there and builds up and she starts to choke. So that was traumatizing, and I was crying all the time, brought her home, thought she wouldn't live longer than 6 months, like they said. They said the only thing you can do that maybe there's a chance is, instead of having her eat, put the bowl on the floor and she eats vertically, put the bowl at a height and maybe slant it a bit and have her lean up to it and eat that way. So I tried it, of course, and it went really well, actually. She wasn't vomiting anymore, and it was only wet food that I was giving her, not dry kibble, because that seemed to be the issue that would build up and she would choke. So the wet food seemed to be something that she could throw up if it did go into the wrong space, and it would be okay. But the vet said like eventually she's either going to choke or she's going to get aspiration pneumonia from having liquid in that area of the throat and breathing it in all the time. So, you know, I prepared for the worst, kept feeding her in the way that seemed to be working. And the months just kept ticking by, you know. I was still distraught because I thought this cat was only going to live 6 months. So 6 months comes and goes. She's 7 months, she's 8 months, she's 9 months. And then I'm like, oh, okay. But like, she's still going to die. Like, okay, they were wrong about her being 6 months old. Maybe it's 9 months, you know, fine. She's not going to be here much longer. Then she's a year old. Then she's 2 years old. Now she's 3 years old, and I'm pretty sure she's not dying anytime soon, which is fantastic, and I can stop being distraught over it. But what it did mean was that in moving countries, you cannot bring a pet into Britain in the cabin of an airplane. It just cannot be done. It has to be in the hold luggage. You cannot bring a pet in on a ferry. You can bring them in on the Eurotunnel. With the airplane, you can only bring them in the hold, as I just said, but she can't go on the hold because of her condition, because there's restrictions in the hold, or not restrictions, but laws that the animal has to have access to water, for example, in the cage, and the cage has to be a certain dimension, but she has to sit up to drink any water, or else she'll basically be at risk of aspiration pneumonia and might die. So she can't go in the hold at all. She could go in the hold without water, but she would need water for the trip, you know, and there is no cages that are like, you know, vertical. So basically she just can't go in the hold. She has to go in the cabin, but she can't enter Britain in a cabin. What to do? The only thing we could do was drive her through the Eurotunnel, which is the tunnel that connects the bottom of England to the top of France. Cool. Went looking for rental cars because we don't have our own car, and pretty much nowhere would let you rent a car in France and then drop it back in the UK. Pretty much nowhere. There was one, and it was like crazy expensive, like more than $1,500. So that wasn't an option. So in the end, what we did, we flew from Malaga to Paris. 3 of us, me, my boyfriend, the cat, Nairobi. Nairobi and I stayed in Paris while Sam continued to fly to London, which is where Sam rented a car and then the next day drove all the way down to Paris, stayed the night with us, collected us, and then drove all the way back through the Eurotunnel again and all the way up into Scotland, which was insane, and it took many days. And it did still cost about €600. Was it each or total in car rental fees? I think it was each. I think it was €600 each for the car rental. But, you know, we got her there. We got her here. And she seems to quite like it here. So, yeah, she survived. I'll give you a bit more detail, I guess, on some parts of that journey. To get her into the UK, even in the Eurotunnel, she needed to have certain things. So she needed to have a pet passport. That's fine. I had that already. And she needed to have an up-to-date rabies vaccination. So I had to go to the vet beforehand and get that. And she needed something else. What did she need? A microchip, but she already had that. So that was fine. So yeah, and the whole journey, I guess, was interesting. I had a little carrier for her. We got to the airport in Malaga, and we had actually booked business class flights with Air France, which was amazing. Like, it was the first time I had ever flown business class, and it was largely because you get the free middle seat in between you. And we, you know, used that for the cat. We still had to pay for her. I can't remember how much it was. I think it was €300 for my flight and €300 for Sam's flight. I think she was maybe €150 to fly. We arrived in Malaga. It included lounge access because it was business class. So we brought Nairobi to the lounge. I'll put up a photo here actually because I took her out in the lounge even though I wasn't supposed to, and we had a little photo shoot there. She loved it. Yeah, she was super quiet the whole way. She is a very good traveler, I must say. She never meows. She never, makes any ruckus or does anything weird. She is great actually to travel, but I can tell that she doesn't really, really like it. She tends to breathe just a little bit heavier and her heart is going a little bit faster, but she's not that bad or distressed or cowering or anything. So it's quite good. Went to the lounge. That was great. I had been having some slight tummy issues, which I will actually get into because it's a kind of a health update. Some stuff I mentioned in previous podcasts, perhaps you'll be interested in knowing how they panned out. I had been having some tummy upsets, so I didn't really, eat too much in the lounge, even though I normally would because I want to get the money's worth, but this time I was like, I might just take it easy, drink some water. Got on to the KLM. No, it wasn't KLM. Sorry, it was Air France. Air France? Correct me on that if I'm wrong. I think it's Air France. And it was awesome. Like the seats themselves in business class, they didn't have that much. They had a little bit more room, but not that much more room. It wasn't like first class. It was definitely just business class, but it was nice. We got the little fancy, here's a little towel for your hands, I don't know why I'm speaking in a British accent, but the little, why do they even give those out? Just, what are you supposed to even do? Do you wash your hands with them? Do you wipe your face? I wipe my face with them, but perhaps that's really uncouth. Sorry, I should be working now. I'm getting messages from people. I'm going to work late tonight to make up for this, but I wanted to do this in the daylight. Anyway, where was I? The Air France business class seats were great. I did also take the cat out of the carrier, even though I wasn't supposed to. I don't know if any Air France people are going to look at this. Probably not, because barely anyone listens to this podcast. But I hope they're not listening, because what I did was when they were like, cabin crew, seats for takeoff. And, that's when you can get away with some stuff, because there's nobody around. All the staff are buckled in. So everyone was buckled in, and I'm unzipping the carrier that has the cat in it. And I, took her out and stuff. And we had a little photo shoot by the window. And she was mesmerized actually by the window and looking out at the clouds and stuff. It was after we took off. It was interesting, but I again don't think she really, really enjoyed it. Her heart was going quite fast. She was breathing quite fast. I fed her a little bit of, those little liquid, what would you call them? Like a pouch, those long liquid pouches that cats just go crazy for. I fed her some of that on the plane, and she seemed to really like that. So at least she was eating. That was good. And we got the best meal I've ever had on any airplane ever. Again, I have photos of this. I'll put them up. And what I ate was a profiterole, this massive, really fancy profiterole. And I should not have eaten that in hindsight, but I did, and I knew I shouldn't have. I was a bit this might set my tummy off now, but I'm going to eat it because it was, do I regret it? No, I don't really regret it, actually. It was really tasty. So we get to Paris, and because Sam's flight is not a connecting flight, he has to leave and then go back in. So he left with me with the cat and all the bags and put me in a taxi, basically. This taxi cost me €44. I basically got ripped off, even though it was taking me less than 10 minutes down the road to this kind of industrial estate where I had just booked 2 nights in this hotel. And he was like, €44. I was like, are you serious? But what can I do? It's just me at this stage. Sam is in the airport going to London on that flight. And, I just have to pay him. I paid him €44. And I went to the reception to check in, and I said, look, the taxi driver guy just charged me €44 to get here. Is that right? And he was like, no, it should be €25. And even €25 for less than 10 minutes is extortionate. But €44, I definitely got ripped off there, which was annoying because he was an official taxi guy as well that someone at the airport directed me to with a high vis. So that was left a bad taste in my mouth. Checked in, got the cat set up, got her little travel cat litter thing set up in the corner, got her bowl, her special bowl, and like at the stand and stuff, like that she has to eat at a height, and like mixed up some food, and I let her out, and she kind of just immediately went under the bed, and later on she came out and kind of explored. But every time we go to a new hotel room, it's straight under the bed. And I didn't feel great. I felt a bit funky, and I think it was the profiterole at this point. I know now it was, but I thought at the time it was profiterole. So I was like, oh, I better not be too crazy tonight. I'm gonna like just eat something healthy. So I got some stuff in the store, just some normal healthy like fruit and stuff. Not like really probably a dinner. Like I think I got like a not takeaway, but like a convenience store salad mix, and then some fruit. And I had like a hankering for some milk. So I got this 1 liter bottle of milk, and there was no fridge in the hotel room. So I decided I kind of drank this milk in its entirety, not in one go, but like by the end of the night. And the next morning I woke up and I felt like the worst I've probably ever felt in my life. And I looked in the mirror and I pulled up my t-shirt, and the whole right side of my abdomen was massively swollen. Not the left side was a bit swollen as well, but you could definitely see it way more on the right hand side. Like my stomach was like hanging down. It was scary, to be honest. I thought I was gonna explode, or that some alien was like gonna come out of me like Alien versus Predator or something. I was like, I am screwed. I'm gonna explode like that girl in Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. But I didn't. I still felt awful. And now I know that what happened is, rewind, you might remember I had like what was either pneumonia, a mild pneumonia, or a bad chest infection at Christmas time, which caused ahistorical. I'm an English student, graduate, I should know this. And that caused a flare-up of a pre-existing dental condition, which basically became antibiotic resistant and did not go away. So I had 3 courses of antibiotics over the course of about 6 weeks, which was about 30 days of antibiotics 3 times a day with some gaps in between courses. It eventually went away, but basically it wrecked my gut microbiome. And what happened was I became lactose intolerant, which is super weird. I didn't even know that could happen, but apparently it can. And now I'm lactose intolerant. And ever since I worked this out, which was basically through, listing the foods that triggered me, which was pizza, another pizza, the profiterole, the milk, and another few things, everything was dairy. And I stopped eating dairy. And it wasn't an overnight thing, but like it got better bit by bit by bit. And now I feel a lot better. I'm still a bit swollen actually, but it is a lot better than it was. And I had blood and urine and stool sample tests, and everything came back great. So, because there's other things that could have been like gallbladder, liver. These are the worries, that come up when things swell in that area. But no, it's like a gut thing and it's getting better. So that's great. But basically, I woke up to this in Paris. Sam had gotten to London okay and drove all the way down to Paris in one day through the Eurotunnel. Arrived in Paris and I am like a mess. I'm in bits. The cat's a bit stressed. She hasn't pooped all night. I'm worried about that. I am visibly exploding. And no, not like, I'm not pooping exploding. So I hope that doesn't sound like that, If anything, I wasn't going when I needed to. That is way too much information. I was exploding outwards in terms of my belly. Sometimes I wish I edited this podcast more, but I'm just going to leave that in because I couldn't be bothered to edit it. And yeah, he arrived to a total, excuse my French, a shit show. Comforted me. Next day, we left for the Eurotunnel again. well, him again, me for the first time. The Eurotunnel, in case anyone is wondering, is actually really cool. It's like this train for cars. So you drive in and you get your passport checked like twice. You have to, with an animal, you have to drive to like the pet area, and you get out and you bring the cat in. They scan the microchip, they check the pet passport, see if they have all the vaccinations. If everything's great, you're good to go, get back in the car. And you kind of drive into a line that you would queue up, almost like getting into a ferry. They give you the green light and then you drive in. And it's basically just this massive train, double-decker, and you just drive right onto it. And then you just park and you stay in your car for the entirety of the journey. And it's a really weird experience. It's quite cool. If anyone is wondering, it costs about £116 for the car to go through, and it costs an extra £22 if you have an animal. So that is what we paid. And we got out then at a place called Dover, which was cool. We went to see the White Cliffs of Dover after we disembarked from the Eurotunnel. I might put some photos up here as well, because we took Nairobi out of the car to give her some fresh air and let her look around at the White Cliffs. And she seemed to really like the seagulls and all the birds, and her hair was like flowing in the cool wind. Of course, she's used to Spain, so she was a bit like, what is this? But I think she really liked it. And yeah, we kept going then. We went to Canterbury. We stayed overnight in Canterbury in this cool place that it wasn't very expensive, but it had like a swimming pool and stuff, which was cool. And had a lovely breakfast the next morning, actually. Continued the journey the next day. We drove to Stratford-upon-Avon, which is where Shakespeare was born. Visited the house that Shakespeare was born in. I posed with some Shakespearean statue, had some lovely lunch. Continued to Manchester, which is, shout out my friend Rebecca O'Hare from back in the day in the University of Limerick. She let us stay at her house in Manchester because she lives there now. She was very excited to meet the cat. So thanks once again, Rebecca, for putting up a stray such as myself. Lovely dinner that night. And then continued on to Scotland the next day. So we are here now. You can see that she's miraculously stayed sleeping in her little bed. This cat has like lovely little beds. And she chooses to sleep in the cardboard box one, which I don't know why she does that, but I mean, each to their own. She is like going outside not unsupervised, but without her little harness. In Malaga, I would put a harness on her and we would go to the beach and she would look at the birds. And here she started kind of doing this thing where she goes to the front door, because in Malaga, right, I was like on the 9th floor of an apartment. She would look out the windows, but she wouldn't want to go out the front door because it's just, a hallway 9 floors up. But here she started doing this thing where she goes right up to the front door, which leads to the outside. And she makes this little, it's not a bark, but it's like a little like kind of a sound. And she wants to go outside. So I open the door. I've started doing this bit by bit. I open the door and she kind of just goes out and she sits in the garden for a little bit and looks at the birds. Garden. It's like a little tiny square patch of grass. But I mean, it's, in front of a bit of a wood. There's no main road super accessible. It's pretty safe. There's no dogs around. And yeah, then she kind of comes back in when she's ready. I do always keep an eye on her out the window because she's always been an indoor cat. She's never been an outdoor cat. So I'm still a bit paranoid. But yeah, it's actually quite cool. I feel like she's more in tune with nature here. People are probably listening to this thinking, she's a cat, of course she likes to be outdoors. But for me, having her indoors for the last 3 years and her being, seemingly okay with that, I was a bit kind of shocked actually by the behavior. I can only imagine that it's maybe closer to her more natural environment here, being that she's extremely hairy hairy. And she's, her breed is more used to being in climates such as this one where it's cooler, windier, more small birds around. Whereas in Malaga, it's quite hot. The beach is out the front door, there's not much green space. The birds are massive seagulls that are almost bigger than her. So not these tiny wrens that she would like to look at. So yeah, I think she's actually happier here than she probably has been in Malaga, which is a blessing and a curse because I'm very happy that she likes it here because we're here. But when it comes time to move, will she be sad to leave? That would be sad. And also when it comes time to move, I don't even want to think about it because I don't know what we're going to do. I cannot do that journey again. Basically, if we need to leave and come back, I just cannot do it again. Once was enough. And I think that's pretty much it for today. I made a little list of stuff, but I think I've pretty much listed everything. If there's anything I haven't glaringly obviously haven't mentioned in terms of how to move with a cat, do maybe let me know in the comments or something if you have any questions. I don't know anything really about dogs or other animals, moving them, but I can imagine it's quite similar. So if you do have any very specific questions about my experience moving with the cat, do let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now. In the future, you can expect more Scotland. I got this t-shirt. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm wearing a Scotland jumper. I'm not just randomly yelling Scotland. But I got this in Primark. I missed Primark so much. In Ireland, we call it pennies. Anyway, in the future, you can look forward to more Scotland content and day trips, including like Glencoe, maybe Fort William, Loch Ness, perhaps, maybe some islands. I'm excited to see puffins in the wild for the first time ever. So yeah, do stay tuned for that. It's going to be a wild ride and we'll see where the road takes us. Bye.